cannot be trusted with a firearm and who lawfully may not have one and ought to be held responsible if they get caught with one. And by the way, it's a firearm or ammunition. That's another difference between federal and state law. So if you've got a guy, a convicted felon, can't catch him with a gun, but he's got a bullet in his pocket. If he's the right guy with the prior criminal history that we're looking for, he's eligible for a federal prosecution. So, number one at the top of the list, this is easy. Felons in possession of firearm and ammunition. We're particularly looking for your worst of the worst. We're looking for people who typically have violent crime conviction histories. Prior aggravated assaults, prior aggravated robberies, prior carjackings, prior attempted murders. Anything to do that is violent. Those are the people we're looking for. And if they have 2 or more prior violent felonies, we may be able to get, happening on separate occasions, we may be able to get them to be determined to be an armed career criminal. Is that right, Vic?
That's right.
And under the federal sentencing guidelines, if you're determined to be an armed career criminal, that's 15 years at 100%. Okay? And that's not 15 years in the Decatur County Jail where mama and girlfriend can visit you. That's 15 years in a federal penitentiary far, far away from here where I can remove you from this community. 15 years in Terre Haute, Indiana, or Leavenworth, Kansas, or Atlanta, Georgia, or Forest City, Arkansas, where mama and girlfriend can't visit you, and where people in Decatur County will forget you after 15 years because you're not terrorizing them anymore. We all know that a felon in possession, any prohibited person in possession of a firearm or ammunition is up to no good. They are violent, and we want them. Okay? By the way, it's going to save state and local tax dollars if the federal government takes them into our custody. They go with the marshals. We'll be glad to take that tax burden on. People convicted of prior domestic violence incidents or under a current order of protection. So even if they don't have a felony, you got a misdemeanor DV, or you got a current order of protection issued by your general sessions judge or chancery court, those people have demonstrated to us that they're violent, can't be trusted, ought not have a firearm and ammunition. And y'all know these are really volatile people, typically, who have demonstrated that. And so we want to make sure we're getting firearms out of their possession and getting them into custody. This is pretty interesting. The federal law does something that state law does not do. And you'll hear me say this more than one time today. There are some things that the federal government does very well that we're here to offer you. And there are some things that only the federal government may do. And this is one of them. Under federal gun laws, if we can prove that someone is an unlawful user of an illegal controlled substance or is addicted to an unlawful controlled substance, even if they don't have a misdemeanor or felony that prohibits their firearm possession, if they're in possession of a firearm, we can prosecute them for that. Now you say, how do you do that? Yeah.
Look on Facebook.
There you
we
go.
got one the other day where a guy was smoking marijuana and showing off all his marijuana. He also had a firearm.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's literally how we can solve those cases. So if you've got a guy who admits that he smokes dope every day and you catch him with a gun, no, even if he's not a felon or a DV, we can take him. If he's the kind of guy that really merits and warrants and is suitable for federal prosecution, we can remove him from your community. We solve a lot of cases by social media where these guys love to brag about their drug use and they love to brag about their gun possession. Well, okay. We'll be glad to take that proof into a federal court. Illegal aliens in possession of firearms. You know, people who are in this country unlawfully are not allowed to have guns or ammunition, just as a matter of their status. We're interested in those people. Any person who's a fugitive from justice or currently under any felony indictment. So if you've got a guy on the run or anybody who's in indictment status, in possession of a firearm, we're looking for those people. Any person who possesses or discharges a firearm in a school zone can be a federal law violation. I don't have to speak to y'all about how important school safety and security is. So as we have ramped up and heightened our awareness about school security and school threats, you got somebody threatening or being in a school zone or around the school with a firearm that needs to go, bring them to us. We'd love to make an example out of them. We'd love to make sure that we're holding them accountable for that. Prohibited weapons under federal law. Machine guns, short barrel shotguns, firearms with obliterated serial numbers, and the biggest category of all, stolen firearms, right? How many people leave their firearm in the console of their truck, park it in their driveway, and leave it unlocked? How many murder guns and crime guns get stolen from legitimate law-abiding citizens who leave their guns unsecured. A stolen firearm that's used in another crime, we can prosecute that as a federal matter, just by it being a stolen firearm that's traveled in interstate commerce. It's important that we get that information to the ATF as we solve the case. Now, obviously, all of these cases that I'm talking to you about, all these categories, require when you solve the case or when you make the arrest that you actually recover and seize the firearm or the ammunition, okay? So if you've got, and we'll talk about robbery in just a minute, but if you've got a robbery where you've got a surveillance camera with a guy using a black firearm to rob a convenience store, but you never recover the firearm, we have to use a different law for that. But these are just prohibited people or prohibited weapons where you have recovered the firearm, where we can analyze and examine and certify that firearm by the ATF. It's traveled in interstate commerce. All right? So that's a big category there. So we know people that are in possession of those items are up to no good. Straw purchasers. All right? So it's a mama or girlfriend or associate who's not a convicted felon, who has a family member or a boyfriend who is a convicted felon, and she goes and buys the gun and provides it to him. That's a violation of federal law. We're interested in making sure, again, that we're targeting those people who are providing the firearms to the dangerous people in our communities. And that includes providing it to felons, aliens, or juveniles. So people who do that, we want to make sure that we're targeting those. Just last month, the Attorney General, really, and kind of in the wake of the Parkland school shooting down in Florida and some other firearms-related incidents across the country, instructed U.S. attorneys and the ATF to ramp up and make sure that we are robust in our prosecutions, investigations and prosecutions of people who lie, make materially false statements on the forms that you fill out to purchase a firearm at a federal firearms licensed dealer. So people who go to the gun shop who is a felon, they call them lie and try cases. So I'm a felon, I walk into the store and I just lie about, no, I'm not a felon, let me buy one. Fill out the form, they catch the lie. Hopefully that gun dealer and the ATF are blocking that point of sale, but that lie, that false statement, is in fact a federal offense, much akin to perjury and obstruction. So the Attorney General's asked us to target that as well. And then finally, what we have seen across this district and across the country is the bad guys are so desperate to get the guns that they're starting to rob and burglarize pawn shops, firearms dealers, just breaking in and stealing caches of guns and firearms and ammunition and things like that. So that's also a federal offense, obviously. So we want to make sure we get those as well. So